We looked at factoring polynomials. We'll look today at simplifying rational expressions, which we've looked at. We'll just review that from our last review session, and then we will simplify complex. So we're looking at multiplying and dividing. So we're on goal 2 of rational equations. So we want to be able to multiply and divide so we can use that in solving. So here, this is, we want to simplify or factor as much as we can first. And this is kind of already factored for us. And so we see that those, like we saw yesterday, will factor out. There's a common factor, and that equals 1. And we're left with 3y over y squared minus 9. We also want to talk about where this is undefined, just like we saw yesterday. What values, would make this undefined or 0 in the denominator? So y cannot equal -7. And we know this goes to y plus 3 because it's the difference of squares, y minus 3. 3 or -3 because all those values would give me a 0 in the denominator. Then we factor or simplify so that both factors to 1 because anything divided by itself is 1, and we're left with 3y over y squared minus 9. So that's kind of what we talked about in the last lesson with simplifying rational expressions. So same thing, concept there. We're going to go ahead and start looking at multiplying. So when I get into multiplying and dividing, so we're going to use that use these and use the skills that we just learned and reviewed to multiply and divide. So remember when we're multiplying and dividing fractions, so if I had 3/4 times 1/2, you multiply your numerator and you multiply your bottom or your denominator, which is the exact same thing we're going to do here with these expressions. And then dividing, when we had 3/4, say, divided by 1/3, it would be the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So 3/4 times 3/1. So these are our rules of multiplying and dividing fractions. We'll use those with rational expressions. So if I want to multiply and divide these, I would just multiply the top, 8x times 7y squared, over the bottom, 21y cubed times 16x cubed. And we factor our common factors, so x and x cubed would be x squared. 8 goes into 16 twice. 7, 21, 3 times y squared, and we're left with y. So on the top, we just have 1, and on the bottom, we have 3y times 2x squared, and we can go ahead and multiply that. So y times 6x squared y, or 1 over 6x squared y. Right? And it's undefined at x and y cannot equal 0. Okay. So divided, we'll use those same rules we did back in elementary when we had fractions and we divide. We'll multiply by the reciprocal. 6c squared d squared over 5m5. So we flip that second one, the reciprocal of that one, because if I multiply anything by that, it gives me just 1. And then go ahead and simplify. So I'm left with 2 times 2, which is 4, times 1, times k squared, times d, all over m to the 4th. So let's look at some polynomials. Same thing. Let's factor out, or factor everything we can. So k minus 3 over k plus 1. We know that I can rewrite this one as negative 1, which would make it k squared minus 1. So then that factors to k, because it's a difference of squares, k plus 1, k minus 1. And what multiplies to be 3 adds to be negative 4, negative 3, negative 1. So k minus, sorry, I always go back to x. K minus 3 and k minus 1. So I'll multiply all those top ones, so negative 1, k minus 3, k plus 1, k minus 1. So that multiply the numerator, then multiply the denominator, k plus 1, k minus 3, k minus 1. And then simplify your common factors. So we have 1 times 1 times 1 times negative 1. Negative 1 over 1, or negative 1. So division, same like we did. We'll factor everything out, and then we will multiply by this reciprocal of this. So d plus 2, d minus 1 is this factored. This one we're multiplying by the reciprocal, so we're going to put this one on top. So d plus 2, d plus 1 over d plus 3. Then we can multiply, we can start simplifying. So we have 2 times 1, which is 2 times d plus 1 over d minus 1. So that's how we're going to multiply and divide. I want to look at one extra one, and these complex ones, they look scary, but it is basically this divided by that. So it's the same as x squared over 9x squared minus 4y squared divided by x cubed over 2y minus 3x. And we'll do the same thing. Flip this one. So x squared over 9x squared minus 4y squared times 2y minus 3x over x cubed. And then go ahead and factor, and that will help us to get that. So this will go in here once. This can factor into 3x squared, x minus 2y, 3x plus 2y, and if I factor the negative 1 out, I get 3x minus 2y. So that cancels this out, and I have negative 1 over x here times 3x minus 2y.